I never imagined I'd one day have to defend my own home from someone trying to steal it. And definitely not from Brenda Kensington, the self-proclaimed queen of our homeowners association. But that's exactly what happened after my appendix ruptured and I spent 3 miserable weeks in the hospital. It all started 6 months ago when I moved into Cedar Ridge Estates, a picture-perfect suburban neighborhood filled with trimmed hedges, pristine driveways, and people who measured their self-worth by how green their lawns were. I'm an architect who works from home, and I've spent years saving up to buy what I thought was my dream house. The day I moved in, I met her. Clipboard in hand, smiled tighter than a locked vault. "Welcome to Cedar Ridge," she said, in a tone that made it sound more like a warning than a greeting. "I'm Brenda Kensington, president of the Homeowners Association. You'll need to review our bylaws immediately. We don't tolerate rule breakers here." Before I could even respond, she handed me a 3-inch binder stuffed with rules and regulations, scanning my moving boxes like she was inspecting contraband. "Your mailbox is 2 inches taller than regulation," she noted sharply. "You'll need to replace it within 7 days or face a fine." I forced a polite smile and told her I'd take care of it. That seemed to disappoint her. Later, my next-door neighbor Marcus filled me in. "She thrives on confrontation," he warned. "Brenda's been president for 5 years. Nobody wants to run against her because she'll make your life miserable. Most of us just try to stay off her radar. For the first few months, I did exactly that. I followed every rule, paid every fee, and kept my head down. But that all changed the moment I decided to plant a vegetable garden in my backyard. Now, according to the HOA bylaws, gardens were perfectly fine as long as they weren't visible from the street. Mine wasn't. It sat behind my house, neatly enclosed by a decorative fence. But that didn't stop Brenda from showing up at my front door one Saturday morning, red-faced and ready for battle. "Your garden violates Section 12, Paragraph 4 of our bylaws," she declared, clutching her clipboard like a sword. "Vegetable gardens must be approved by the landscaping committee, which I chair." I calmly opened the same binder she'd given me and showed her the section in question. "Actually," I said, "the rules only state that the garden must be out of street view. There's nothing about committee approval." Her smile vanished and her eyes hardened. "Then perhaps the bylaws need updating." "Until they are, remove it by Monday or you'll be fined $50 per day." I refused. That's when the real war began. Brenda started documenting every tiny thing she could possibly call a violation. "My grass is a 1/4 inch too tall. My trash can be visible for 30 minutes after pickup. Even the color of my garden hose," she claimed, "it was too distracting." The fines started piling up. But I contested every one of them during HOA meetings, citing the actual bylaws. The board members, clearly tired of her antics, often sided with me. Each time they overruled her, I could see the fury building. Behind her forced smile, Brenda Kensington wasn't used to being challenged, and definitely not in public. After one particularly heated meeting, where the board once again ruled in my favor, she cornered me in the parking lot. "You think you're clever?" she hissed, eyes blazing. "Nobody makes me look foolish in front of the board. Nobody. You'll regret moving into Cedar Ridge, I promise you that." I brushed it off, assuming it was just another one of her power trips. That was my first mistake. Because Brenda Kensington didn't make idle threats, and I was about to find out just how far she'd go. 2 weeks later, I woke up at 3 a.m. with unbearable stomach pain. Within minutes, I was in an ambulance, then on an operating table. My appendix had ruptured and the infection spread fast. What should have been a routine surgery turned into a fight for my life. I spent 3 weeks in the hospital battling sepsis, followed by 2 more at home recovering. While I was lying in a hospital bed, barely conscious, Brenda was busy trying to take my house. Marcus later told me he'd seen her coming and going from my property several times while I was hospitalized. She told the neighbors she was checking on things for me and watering my plants. In reality, she was setting up a full-blown scam. The day I came home, weak and moving slowly, I found an official-looking notice taped to my front door. It stated that, due to abandoned property regulations, my house had been claimed by the HOA and was now under new ownership. The notice even referenced a deed transfer, allegedly showing that I'd sold my home to Brenda Kensington for $1. My heart dropped. I called the county clerk's office immediately, and to my shock, the records confirmed it. According to their files, I had appeared before a notary 2 weeks earlier and signed over my home while I was actually lying unconscious in the ICU. This is fraud, I told the clerk, my voice shaking. I couldn't have signed anything. I was in the hospital. The clerk sympathized, but explained I'd need to file a legal challenge to reverse the deed. Meanwhile, Brenda had already filed an eviction notice, giving me 72 hours to vacate her property. I called my cousin Sarah Collins, a real estate attorney, and within an hour she was at my door, reviewing the documents. Her face went pale as she flipped through the pages. "This is an open and shut case of fraud," she said, "but we have to move fast. We'll file an emergency injunction to stop the eviction and then go after her for fraud, forgery, and breaking and entering." Sarah spent the night drafting the filings while I gathered evidence. I called the hospital to get medical records proving I'd been there the entire time, complete with timestamps. I also installed security cameras around the property, just in case Brenda decided to push things even further. And it turned out that was a wise move. Because the very next morning, as I sat at my kitchen table sipping weak coffee and trying to process it all, Brenda Kensington showed up again. This time with 2 strange men standing behind her. "These gentlemen will be helping you move your belongings," Brenda declared with a triumphant grin as 2 burly men stood awkwardly behind her. "I've generously given you until 5 p.m. today. No need to wait for the official eviction." I stepped into the doorway, blocking her entry. "Brenda," I said evenly, "you forged a deed transfer while I was in the hospital. That's a felony. My attorney has already filed an emergency injunction and is preparing criminal charges against you." For the first time, her smug smile faltered, but only for a heartbeat. Then she lifted her chin. "That's ridiculous. You signed the papers yourself. I have a notarized document proving it. I was in intensive care, unconscious from sepsis," I replied, holding up my hospital records. "And the security cameras I installed last night recorded you admitting that you expect me to vacate a home you fraudulently claimed. Would you like to keep talking or wait until we're in court?" The 2 men exchanged uneasy glances. One muttered, "We were told this was just a routine eviction. We don't want any part of this." They turned and left, leaving Brenda standing alone on my porch, her face twisting with fury. "You think you're clever?" she spat. "I have connections in this town you couldn't even imagine. When I'm done with you, you'll wish you'd just walked away." That same afternoon, the judge granted our emergency injunction, securing my right to stay in my home while the case went forward. Sarah, my cousin and attorney, immediately filed a criminal complaint with the district attorney's office, complete with hospital documentation, the forged deed, and the footage of Brenda's confrontation. To my surprise, the investigation moved fast. The notary, whose stamp appeared on the forged deed, had no record or recollection of any such transaction. A handwriting expert confirmed the signature wasn't mine. And bank records revealed that the very next day, after buying my home for $1, Brenda had gone on a shopping spree, purchasing thousands of dollars worth of furniture and appliances, clearly preparing to move in. But the most damning evidence came from Brenda's own laptop, which police seized under a warrant. Investigators found multiple drafts of the fake deed, internet searches like how to claim abandoned property and forging signatures, and even a floor plan of my house labeled with notes such as "Convert guest room into office and replace curtains." 3 weeks after I'd returned from the hospital, we finally had our day in court. Brenda walked in looking confident, dressed in a sharp business suit, every hair perfectly in place, an expensive handbag swinging from her arm. She clearly believed her standing in the community would protect her. She was very, very wrong. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair and a gaze that could slice through concrete, reviewed the evidence with growing disbelief. When Brenda's attorney weakly suggested there might have been a misunderstanding about my hospitalization, the judge's expression hardened. "Counsel," she said, icily, "the evidence shows your client forged documents to claim ownership of a home while its rightful owner was hospitalized with a life-threatening condition. There is no misunderstanding here, only criminal fraud of the most egregious kind." When Brenda took the stand, her mask began to crack. Under Sarah's questioning, she insisted I had signed the papers before going to the hospital. But once Sarah presented time-stamped medical records proving I was sedated and incapable of signing anything, Brenda's story shifted. "He was going to sell it to me anyway," she shouted. "We had an understanding. I just expedited the paperwork." Sarah tilted her head. "Do you have any documentation of this understanding?" Brenda hesitated. "No, it was a verbal agreement." "A verbal agreement," Sarah repeated, her tone calm but razor-sharp, "with a man who was unconscious in intensive care. That's your testimony under oath." Brenda's composure was shattered. She slammed her hands on the table. "He didn't deserve that house," she screamed. "He moved in and immediately started breaking rules. That garden was an eyesore. His mailbox violated regulations. Someone had to teach him a lesson." The courtroom went dead silent. Even her attorney dropped his pen and buried his face in his hands. The judge stared at Brenda in disbelief before speaking, voice cold and measured. "Mrs. Kensington, this court finds that you knowingly and willfully committed forgery, fraud, and attempted theft of real property. These are serious felonies in this state." She turned to the bailiff. "Take the defendant into custody." Brenda's bravado vanished as the bailiff approached, handcuffs glinting under the fluorescent lights. "You can't be serious," she cried, backing away. "I'm the president of the Homeowners Association. I volunteer at the community center. People respect me." The judge's reply was calm but merciless. "Mrs. Kensington, you attempted to steal a man's home while he was fighting for his life. You will be held without bail, pending sentencing." Then she looked directly at me. "Sir, I am ordering the immediate nullification of the fraudulent deed transfer. Your property remains yours legally and unequivocally. Furthermore, the defendant will be required to pay restitution for any legal costs incurred." Finally, she turned back to Brenda, now trembling as the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. "Mrs. Kensington," the judge continued, "given the severity of these charges and your utter lack of remorse, you are facing a minimum of 5 to 7 years in state prison, plus fines up to $75,000. Brenda's face drained of color as reality crashed down. "But my reputation," she stammered, "my position in the community." The judge cut her off with chilling finality. "You should have considered that before committing felony fraud." And just like that, the gavel came down. The woman who once ruled Cedar Ridge Estates with an iron clipboard was led out of the courtroom in cuffs, while I stood there, finally reclaiming the peace she had tried so hard to steal.